Welcome everybody, this is SharePoint Patterns and Practices General SharePoint Development Special Interest Group, which is a quite long name, but basically this is the bi-weekly sync with the community where we're going to actually go through everything else except SharePoint Framework and client-side development. I'm sure we'll touch those in these calls as well every now and then, but this is kind of intended more to be on the provisioning, CSOM, Graph API, development patterns, and all of that kind of things, and obviously column formatting and view formatting definitions, which Chris Kent is going to share today as well. Power Apps and Power Platform integration, all of that stuff is going to be covered in this call. Now, today we have a nice agenda, and once again, I will start with a quick recap on what's happening in the open source projects and open source assets. Well, actually, before that, we'll go through some news and updates from the Microsoft side of the house, but then we'll go to the open source projects. So walk through one slide per each to covering what's happening on those things. What's really cool to see is the growth related on these assets and components. So PnP CSOM Core, PnP PowerShell is being used more and more. Right now, we're closing actually 7,000 requests per second worldwide going through with these components, which is mind-blowing. 7,000 seconds worldwide, which actually is also mind-blowing that we have a system which is able to deal with that amount of incoming requests. But anyway, that's obviously realities of life, and it's nice to see realities of life, and it's nice to see the growth on the usage. Now, after that, we have Chris Kent doing the latest features and capabilities around column and view formatting. To be fair, completely transparent as I usually am, I have no idea what Chris is going to show because we didn't actually agree or discuss the details, but Chris typically have really cool demos related on column and view formatting. So let's see what's actually happening today. Chris, behave. So you need to make sure that you need to remember this family show. So let's stay on that side. Now, the next after that is the Bert. Bert is really one of the core developers related on our provisioning engine as well, and he has now included the multilingual modern pages support on the January release of the engine. And engine is going to be released tomorrow/weekend/Monday. So the latest version, which will then include the multilingual modern pages support. And we can actually walk through the whole process. So we agreed earlier today that we'll show the process. What does it actually mean to enable the multilingual modern pages? And then how does it detect the end user? So what do we need to do in a profile? And also then how do we provision those pages as part of the provisioning engine if we want to use that? Or in general, how the system actually works. So if you use some alternative ways of generating your modern pages in your sites. But that's on the later part. And then if we have time, maybe we'll have time today for the Q&A. We'll see. Typically, we end up actually eating up the full hour every single time. So we'll see how this goes. Feel free to ask questions during the discussion on the chat window. These are typically quite active community calls where people are helping each other, which is one of the key values of these things as well. Now, a few reminders on the joining on these calls. We do welcome community demos as much as possible. So if you have an idea and you want to show something, or you want to show a sample, you want to show something which you built, but it's not an open source thing, that's fine as well. As long as you can demonstrate the pattern and learnings and practices, what you are using within your solution. That's what we're looking for here. Sharing your knowledge between the others will help others people to understand what's possible in the Microsoft 365 or in a SharePoint platform. And that's really the key value of this course. Now, the next option for contributing on the community is contributing in a GitHub. There's a lot of you who are actively contributing in a GitHub as part of the pull requests, issues, and new samples, which are more than welcome because those are super valuable as well. Right now, we have a nice set of sample galleries where you can actually find the latest and greatest samples. Thank you, for example, Hugo Bernier for an awesome work on that one. But those are super valuable for people to find what's relevant samples if they need to implement something within their work, which will save everybody's time, and hopefully they can contribute back on the other people based on their learnings. And that's how we will be much more successful together rather than competing, because if we are building stuff together on the same platform, it makes sense to share your learnings. And the most importantly also, provide feedback. We as a Microsoft, we need to know if there's something which is bothering you. Why aren't they getting this? Why isn't this working? Why aren't they doing X and Y and Z? Please let us know. Every now and then, it might be that we can't actually fix your thing. There might be reasons behind of your thing, but please let us know so we're able to actually have a potential discussion on the reasoning behind of those decisions, or something is missing, or maybe we can provide you what you're looking for, but we were not aware what you need. And that's a super important thing as well. Not only on samples, but also on features on the product as well. So please be active on the chat window, please be active on the community, and keep on providing feedback. Now, a few recap on the URLs. So SharePoint Dev Docs, AKMS SP Dev Docs, our development documentation, SharePoint Dev videos, all of the recordings of community calls, all of the demos, everything else is going to be released in the YouTube channel, AKMS SP Dev videos. SharePoint Dev issues is really for any SharePoint development issue, even in on-premises. So if we run into something, we can potentially help in the SP Dev Docs issue list. So sure, majority of the discussions there is around the modern extensibility on SharePoint, but there is site designs discussion. There's other discussions in the issue list as well. It's designed to be the centralized location where people can go and ask help. And we actually are growing the group of people who are helping on that side as well. So we're really trying to centralize the help on the dev areas on there. And then we do have a super active open source community for many areas. So github.com/SharePoint and github.com/PnP are the assets where you can find reusable components, reusable controls, samples, and all of that stuff, which don't miss out, don't start from scratch, and they are there to help you. Now, a few let's say updates from the Microsoft side of the house. So from my side of the house, community has been really strong again on December. The SharePoint Framework usage grew basically 1.7%, not a massive number, but it's completely understandable. It's a holiday season, and in general, in December, usage goes down, except on the usage of SharePoint Framework, which went up, which is an interesting thing. On the YouTube channel, we have 36,000 views, generating 191 watch time minutes. It's tempting, it would be so tempting to sell ads on our YouTube videos, but we are not doing that, so you don't actually have to wait any seconds to get to the main video. We had more than 75,000 total visitors in the GitHub organization, which is growing rapidly, which is actually really interesting. And then there's 6,992 requests worldwide each second through the PnP components. That's mind-blowing number going through these open source components. 30,000 tenants using the open source components in a monthly basis, 3,200 tenants using PnP tenant templates. We're going to talk about those one today as part of the Bert's demo. And the last metric was around the overall contributions and contributors in a GitHub, which is 1,226. And it is growing monthly basis as well. So thank you for new people who are finding the ways of contributing. Now, a few reminders on the main assets from the last year as well. We keep on promoting the lookbook because it is there to help you. Even though you would be, let's say, you're tasked to drive adoption of Microsoft Teams, guess what? This will help you even there, because quite often you need to have a news platform, you need to integrate portals, and you need to have cool demos, and you can use the lookbook.microsoft.com to actually provision you example content to any tenant in the world. The chart on the middle of the slide is around the metrics. So right now, as expected, the landing template is the most used template right now, and the Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways is right after that one. So they're basically competing which one is the most used template in the lookbook design. The perspective is also kind of a landing page of a company. So it's either the landing or the perspective, which are typically the ones which people use as the root demo of their tenant to demonstrate what's possible in the modern SharePoint. Now, a few other updates from the dev side of the house. The new SharePoint Framework version has been released. So version 1.10 went live on Tuesday. We pushed it out on Tuesday, and you've seen an updates on the documentation potentially already. But really what this is all about is not just about SharePoint Framework anymore. So now we're extending more and more capabilities on the Microsoft Teams and also Office add-ins. So you're able to build Office add-ins, well, in previous time frame, only Outlook Web Access add-ins, but it's going to be extended across the Office add-ins platform. So in future, you're not obviously creating SharePoint Framework solutions, you're creating Microsoft 365 solutions using a consistent extensibility model from a UI perspective, and then you can choose where you want to actually surface your extensibility. Is it going to be in SharePoint? Is it going to be in Teams? Is it going to be in Office settings? But the tool chain is exactly the same, which is really the key advantage of the whole model. What else? A few more slides before we go to the open source projects. There we go. Quick reminder, on next Tuesday, I got this one confirmed earlier today, which is really cool. So we will have a special topic on the next Tuesday's monthly call. The monthly calls are really designed to have more engineering presence and more engineering topics. So we're going to obviously go through possible updates on the latest news, user voice status on the user SharePoint Dev, and then community contributors and companies. Now, the main topic, however, is Project Cortex. So we will have roughly 40 minutes around for Project Cortex in next Tuesday, so which is a really cool thing as well. Now, word of a warning on there, because we see that Project Cortex is extremely interesting for many of the people. We apparently have still the 250 attendee limit on this community course. So you want to be early on that next Tuesday call, just in case, to make sure that you are able to actually get to the Project Cortex updates and get to the call. So because if we hit the 250 limit, it's unfortunately, there's no way for getting you on the call. I think in one of the MVP calls, we actually had a kind of a funny situation where our marketing director couldn't join because we ran out of space in the call, which is pretty awkward. But let's hope that that doesn't happen next Tuesday. So, but stay in touch, be there on next Tuesday as well. Project Cortex looks really interesting. And thank you, Mark, for the good point on joining already. You never know, be early. Now, this one is really around the fact also that if you're kind of worried on how would I contribute back on the community, we do have an initiative related on this one, driven by David Warner, and Hugo has been helping on this one as well. But David really has been scheduling these monthly syncs where he helps people to understand how to use GitHub, how to contribute, how to get started on these things. And we know that that might feel terrifying. It might feel scary for you if you're not familiar with the GitHub and how to get started on contributing. But it is actually quite easy. Joining one of these initiatives or calls, and he and the other people will help you to get started on being active on the community, because that benefits all of us, which is the key point. And a last thing which I wanted to quickly touch base, we will close up this feedback form relatively soon, but if you haven't yet give us feedback on our community calls, please do. We are collecting this from an overall marketing perspective, so we understand, are there too many calls, too less calls, should we combine, should we do something else, what are the calls where people are joining, what are the cool things what we show in these calls, and what is the beneficial things what we should be doing in the future. So again, as a community call survey, please answer that quickly. It's not a massively long survey, quite simple, so it shouldn't take too long. Now, let's actually move forward. Let's go to the PnP CSOM Core library and have a quick look on what's happening there. Oh my God, I took quite a lot of time actually on the intro, but Bert, what's happening in the PnP CSOM Core?
Hello, everyone. PnP CSOM Core library. Think one thing that we did, and I actually did that for Core library, we did that for PowerShell, we did that for modernization, is we bumped the minimal.NET version from 4.5, which was there from the very early days, like 5 years ago, more or less, to 4.6.1. So that's now the minimal version of .NET that you need. That should be no problem for everyone, but just mentioning it, it's there, and that will be there from January. Furthermore, multilingual page support will be shown in the second demo of today. And something new around spaces. So if you have seen some spaces demos, like folks when they walk into like this virtual mixed reality environment, the actual content, if you put like an image, 360-degree image in a space, for example, in the end is a web part that you put on a page, a special page and another web part, but it's a bit like the regular modern pages. So with that in mind, we also foreseen some spaces page support. So you can extract spaces environment and page and put in a template and apply it to another site. And then there is a series of the usual fixes, small PRs, big PRs, but fixes of the core library. And coming up again, there's still about 10 to 15 PRs waiting for us to process. So working hard to get those processed as well.
Just to be super clear on the Microsoft Spaces page support, even though we called it out in here, it doesn't mean that you can actually create those in your tenant because that's not available yet. So this is basically our internal readiness for making things happen. So just to be clear on that.
It's maybe not available in tenants, but if you're in a preview program, you probably have this, and that makes sense. So.
Yep, at some point, absolutely.
All right, so PowerShell, again, the .NET version bump, and then 2 new sets of commandlets, one around setting authoritative news sources, so setting sites that have authoritative news, so that news gets rolled up the company portal using the PnP org news site commandlets. And in a similar fashion, there is a set of commandlets to configure and set organizational asset libraries. And bug fixes. Then we also have Koen Zomers, who is a Microsoft person who's helping out Erwin on processing and validating the PRs, because there's a lot of activity in the PowerShell repo, which is really good. But Koen is kind of helping out Erwin to kind of speed up things there. So that's really good. Thanks for that, Koen.
Moving on to the modernization side of the house.
Modernization, yep. All right, so next one in January, we'll have .NET version bump, but then we also have updated SharePoint 2010 support for web part handling, especially V3 web parts, so like XD-list2 web parts, for example. They were actually they didn't fully work in SP 2010. That should be fixed now. We have an updated caching model. So initial caching was implemented like some homegrown system, a singleton class where you just put stuff in memory, which works fine on a single machine. But if you think about running page transformation in a distributed world, then that's not really handy. So that's why we moved to an implemented iDistributed cache interface. So now we can, for example, use Redis cache in a distributed environment if that would be needed. Upcoming big change that we have to do is this taxonomy mapping, being able to, when you take a page from on-prem, like let's imagine an on-prem publishing page, and you convert it to a modern page in SharePoint Online, then you have 2 different taxonomy stores and different term sets, terms, and how do you kind of map them together? So that's still an open task for us to do. For the scanner, the modernization scan, we are at 2.7 today, so the next one will be 2.8. I don't have an ETA on when that will be released, so but the changes currently are quite minimal. The .NET version bump, and then the main thing is the refactoring for using the scan in a distributed scenario again, like including the caching and including some internal refactorings that went on. One thing that I actually do want to call out, we have announced that delf blocks, not delf, just delf blocks are retired and will be removed. So if you are not sure whether using delf blocks, run the scanner, just run the scan in the block only mode. It will be really quick. It will tell you at least if you're using delf blocks, yes, no. If you're then using delf blocks, you have to make a choice. You can just leave them and they will eventually disappear. I think that eventually is quite soon, that's somewhere June timeframe, we'll actually remove them from SharePoint. So they will be gone. If you, however, want to retain the content, if the content is important for you, you can modernize those delf block pages. So if you go to the modernization links, you will find an article talking about how to modernize blocks, both delf blocks as well as classic blocks. So classic blocks is still there. It's not going away, but we are kind of deprecating that as well, in the sense that we will make it harder for you to use classic blocks, but meaning they will not be dropped from the system, whereas delf really goes away. So for delf, you have to take action if you want to retain the content. I think that's it, Vesa.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you for that. And let's actually move directly on the demo. So Chris Kent is on the call. You should be a presenter already. Now that we have a presenter on 10 days, which is, by the way, awesome.
All right.
And I can hear you. That's a good sign.
Share my screen here. All right. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Kent. I'm a Office Development MVP. There's my Twitter. There's my blog. We're going to talk about UI Fabric icons and how you use those in column formatting and view formatting. So we're going to kind of walk you through the icon name, some of the basics, and then some of the ways you can get a little fancy with that. All right, so let's take a look. So we'll jump over to our classic Warrior Horses site. All right, and on our Warrior Horses site, we like to apply all sorts of different types of formatting so we can make things a little easier. So we're not stuck with just a boring old list, right? So we've seen lots of different examples of this. And if we go over to the things list, we're going to apply a couple of things there. So you can see we've already got several formats in here. It's pretty cool. But for those that aren't aware, there's a whole series, like 1,000+ icons available to you, and you don't have to do anything else. If you want to get fancy and use like a font awesome type of icon or SVGs, we've done some demos on that. There's some samples on that. But this is a much simpler approach, and that's just how can you put an icon like this little rocket here. All right, so if we come over here and we'll just mess with our exciting sentiment column just to kind of show that. Now we're going to go column settings. We're going to format this column, right? And we want to go directly to advanced mode. Eventually you'll be able to pick icons and other things, and that's coming very soon. But for now, we're going to write this kind of in this advanced mode over here. All right, and we're just going to copy and paste some formats here. We can get these directly from the sample site. I'll have a link for that here in just a little bit. But let's say if I wanted to just type this, right? So I wanted to just create a little format here, and I want to say this is Elm type. All right, we'll make this a div. Very exciting, comma. And then we're going to say, all we want to do is show an icon, right? So we're going to say attributes. In this case, that's a subset of properties, so we have a little more squigglies. In this case, all we do is type an icon name, and then right here is where we can paste any kind of icon name we can. Now, I happen to know a couple of icons, right? So here is Fang Body, right, which should be a dog. Very excited to get a dog. Makes a lot of sense, right? Now, where do you get these icons? All right, so you can get those in a couple of spots. The first one is if you go to uifabric.io. Again, all these links will be showing up, and probably David's been posting them right now. Either way, you come here and you go to styles, and you're going to pick icons here, and you can see if you scroll down eventually, you get this kind of icon selector, and you can pick all those. And this works fine. I actually find it easier, especially if I'm having end users pick icons, is this site right here, which is the uifabric icons.azurewebsites.net. All right, so you can see it doesn't have all the extra documentation and code that has Fabric and React and all that other junk mentioned that might confuse people. It just has the icons, right? And you can search here. So if I wanted to, like, instead of a dog, I wanted a cat, right? There's a cat right there. So if I hover over it, I can see, let me zoom that a little bit so we can kind of see that. If I hover over it, right, we can see the word cat is there. So I'm going to paste that instead. I don't like this one's not called dog, for some reason it's called Fang Body. You'll find that the names are fairly inconsistent with some of these things, so you just kind of have to look through them. We switch to cat. Now I've got a lovely cat icon here. Wow, that's exciting, right? So let's see. Let's try that. There you go. You guys haven't seen that, that'll make that a little bit easier to focus. All right, so now we've got a cat. So that's pretty straightforward, right? If I want to apply color or I want to apply size, you'll actually do that a couple different ways. So because this is a font icon, right? So it's using text for that. We can add just style properties here. We come on over here, and we just do something as simple as color, right? And we could say lime. That's my wow, a lime cat. Very exciting, right? If we want to make it larger, we can come in here and we can say font size. All right, in this case, we'll say 36 pixels. That sounds exciting. And it is exciting. Look at that big lime cat. Wow. We can do even other things. So maybe we wanted to make this more theme sensitive, right? So this is a pretty easy way to handle that. But we could also do things like in our attributes, we could add a class. And in this case, we're going to say MS font color. And we're going to say, I think it's theme primary. Well, let's see. Theme primary, right? So we want to add that. Yeah, mine's a nice brown color for this horse site, right? But that'll work. We could also say, some of the standard colors, right? So if I want to make this red, which is that standard Microsoft red, or magenta, all those things. And again, those colors and these classes are all listed here on the uifabric.io site. Right? You can find all of that in this colors section. But that's the idea. That's the general idea for icons. And we've got a ton of different samples on how you can work with these icons and how you can apply them conditionally and so on. But what I wanted to show you also is a couple of different techniques, right? So what if instead of, a cat, I wanted to do this heart icon, right? And that's nice, right? That's one option. If we look over here and if we go back to this guy and we search for heart, we'll find that there's this heart that's just an outline, and then there's heart that's a solid, right? So the heart, let's see, fill, I think is the other one. Yes. So sometimes it's solid, sometimes it's fill, sometimes it's the word mask. You just kind of have to look through that to figure that out from there. But what if I want to kind of combine that? Like, that's cool that it's heart fill, but what if I wanted to go a little more elaborate with that, right? So if I grab something, I'm going to go ahead and just paste one, so I don't have to type all this in front of you. We'll paste it and I'll go through what it's doing, right? So instead now I've got both an outline and I've got a solid that I can color whatever I want. And the way we've done that is we've created kind of a parent div, and we set that position. This is a CSS property to relative, so we can position the elements inside that div to where we want exactly. And we also have this thing here that just says don't show an icon if the sentiment value doesn't exist. All right. So if we come down here, I've just got my children elements. So the first one, pretty straightforward, it's just that heart fill, it's that background. I've set it to that nice red, right? And I set that the size. So therefore, that's easy, right? It's just going to draw that nice red icon in the back. And then I'm going to draw the heart, which is that black outline you're seeing. So I'm setting that to black, and I'm positioning this using absolute positioning. And I'm just putting it right at the top, 0, 0, right there. So it's hovered right over the other one. And it creates this nice kind of outline here, right? And that's pretty cool, like when you want to do, like, I think it's heartbroken. Right, so there's a couple other different heart ones, like, ooh, fancy. Right, so you can start to see that now things look a little better, right? Now I'm not just working in, wireframe type colors, or not just working in a single color. I can go a little crazy with this. Right, now if I wanted to take that a little further, because of course we do, all right, I'm going to copy paste this one as well, and we'll take a look at it. So all we're doing now is we're adding some conditions here. All right, so we're still doing that heart fill in the background, but now we're going to set that color dependent on if the sentiment is positive, negative, or neutral. All right, so we're going to set that. We're also going to set that icon the same way. So we got the icon name here, and we're just using these if statements. Again, these samples will be available to you. So if it's positive, we use the heart. If it's negative, we do that heart broken. And otherwise, we use health, which is another heart icon, but it doesn't have the word heart in it. So if we preview that, wowee! So you can start to see we get some pretty cool ways to kind of draw with the out-of-the-box icons. And so we can go a little further even with this. So let's just save this, and let's move over here. And since there's a time here, we'll just do this one real quick. So now we've got the idea we want to combine this column, right? We want to show sentiment. We also want to show the status, right? We've got done, in progress, kind of the classic status here. Go to column settings. We're going to format this column. Again, because it's a choice column, we're offered this kind of formatting wizard, but we're going to hit advanced mode. I'll scroll over so you can see these columns. And in this case, again, I'm going to cut and paste. You guys can see what I'm doing here. And in this case, we're doing a very similar thing, right? But now we're combining both the sentiment and the status columns. Status, because is represented by current field, and then sentiment is how we're referencing that other column. So we're using the square brackets with a nice $sign, and then the internal name of that column. All right, and so all we're doing there is, let's actually preview it and see what we're doing. Wowee! So now we're combining it. So now our sentiment is shown by one of these emoji icons. So we're doing that same nice thing where we've got the full circle mask. We're setting that to yellow to give us that nice yellow background for the smiley. All right, and then we're actually setting, based on the sentiment, whether it's negative, we use sad, right? Or emoji neutral. Be aware that the emojis are also a little weird, right, when you look for the emojis, right? So that's what I mean by the names are a little bit strange, right? So this is actually emoji 2, and this is emoji with this crazy mouth. All right, but you also notice sad is its own one. So it's a little bit strange. Really, you just kind of go through and you kind of learn them as you go, right? All right, so if we go back here, so all we're doing there is we're applying that. So that's the same thing we saw with this heart. Right? But now we're doing another thing where we've thrown another child element, which is another div. And in this case, we're checking the current field, whether that status is, to show this tiny little icon and determine the color of that tiny icon. So now we're combining those fields, and you can see the only difference is we're also doing absolute positioning, but instead of top and left, we're positioning it based on the right and the bottom. In order to make that work, we had to make width and a height for this div. But by doing that, you can sort of position these icons, which is really great because sometimes, like you'll see things like, if you look at contact, for instance, that's one that shows up. They've got this nice thing where they've got like a contact icon, and then they even have these little like block contact, right? Or contact is being edited, or we love this contact, it's our favorite. And that's really cool. One of the problems is you can't independently color those statuses, and it's fairly inconsistent, right? What if I wanted a delete contact button, right? I suppose I could use this block, but I might want to use that for something else, right? Or if I wanted to promote contact, so I want a little arrow instead. The idea is using this absolute and relative positioning, we can position our own little status icons here and use the whole, UI fabric icons and make all sorts of neat combinations here. And we can do that whether that's using a single field, multiple fields, by just referencing them across column formatting or even view formatting. All right, cool. So that's what I want to show demo-wise. So that's what we got there. So if we just quick review, we take a look here. The main idea is to use this icon name property under attributes. Once you do that, you'll notice I didn't have to do anything else. I just use that, and then I can treat it as if it were text. So I can set the size to the font size property under style or color. If I want to take advantage of those nice UI fabric kind of theming styles, I can. The main thing to note is that icon names are case sensitive, right? So don't be sad if heartbroken doesn't work right because you have a lowercase b. Double check that. The other thing is not every icon is supported. So sometimes there's icons listed there and you'll try them and they don't seem to work. And that's just related to kind of the version of the font that's being used on the UI Fabric site versus the version of the font that's being used in the list view itself. Generally, those get updated, but sometimes they get out of sync, so brand new icons don't always show up. It's a bit of a frustration. The best thing you do is just try them in a simplified format that's just an icon. If it works, then you're good. Also, keep in mind if you want to do those kind of background colors. If we take one more look over here, you can easily find those by either typing the word solid here, right? You start to see all these nice solid ones you can use as a background. And there's usually a wireframe version that goes on top of that. Sometimes it's setting mask is only one of them, but it's also fill is the other way, right? So they got a nice star one you could do that with. Right, you wanted to put a star inside a circle, you can easily do that, right? Create kind of a badge or something else. So be sure to check all that out. All right, and finally, check out the full documentation here. We've got these samples I just showed you are available in the generic icon overlay samples over in our list formatting repo, where we've got tons and tons of samples, and lots of them have to do with icons. If you go to our kind of sample browser, there's a whole section just on icons. If you go there, you can find out how other people are using these icons to correspond with status or even choice fields or progress or all sorts of other different things you could do with that. And then there's the two UI Fabric kind of icon sites. Again, I prefer the bottom one. However, I think the bottom one tends to have more of the unsupported icons because it's a little more up to date. All right, that's all I got. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. We'll move directly to Bert's screen.
Yes, let me share my screen.
Take it away, Bert. Thank you.
All right, multilingual. The flow of the demo is that I'll first show you how to configure multilingual. You might have seen this before, but I guess many folks haven't seen it. So as a quick walk through how to configure it, how to set it up, and then we'll dive into how to programmatically do the same thing. So what I have here is a plain communication site, which I created before this demo. And this is not multilingual by default. It's an English site. Now let's make it multilingual. So if I go to my site settings, site information, site settings, then you will see that there is a language settings page over here. And this is the first step that you have to do. You have to actually enable multilingual for your particular site. How do you do so? Very simple. Just enable multilingual and then pick additional languages. It will show the language of the site already, English in my case. So let's add Dutch there. I can do another language, French, for example, and then save. All right. So it's saved. If I now go back to the home. All right. So that was setting up multilingual in the site itself. And you see already a difference if you see this guy over here. So this indicates that you had success. So this site is now ready to support, in this case, 3 languages, English, Dutch, and French. Now let's add a page to the site. Let's do a regular page. Let's start from blank page, create page. All right, movie page. Thing has to have a name. Let's put some content here. This is English. And we can save the page. Now, all right, page saved. If you click on the translation button, you will see the possible options to create translations. So it mentions this is English, and we can actually create additional languages, Dutch and French. Now, a trick, something to remember, you have to be in edit mode before you can actually generate translations. So now I move to edit mode again. And if you click now on translation, I'm able to create a translation for this page for either all languages or for specific languages individually. What this will do is it will actually create a copy of this page in the site pages library under a specific language folder. So translation, create for all languages. Now we should have the movie page showing up. All right, that's done. Let's republish this one. Let's now go to pages. Back to our NL folder. And here we have our movie page. All right, good. So this page now is meant to be a Dutch page. Now, since we copied the page, it still is the same as the original English page, right? So we can edit this page, do some changes so that we know that this is a Dutch page, movie page. Change this one as well. Dutch. Right. Let's publish the page. And once the page is published, once we have one published version, you will see in the language picker, top right here, that Dutch is available next to English. French is not there yet. Why? Because we didn't publish a French version. So you have to have one published version of the page available. And then you can switch to French as well. So let's do that. Let's go to the pages real quick. Let's go to French. Let's take the movie page. Let's change it again. Edit. Let's put French here. All right, movie page. French. Oopsie. Publish. And now we are able to switch between the three languages. So good. Now, next step is how do I kind of configure my profile to be in a particular language? So in my case, my current profile on the site is English, and I see the English content. If I, for example, let's just show you that. If I take a URL, let's take this movie page, copy the URL. If I just paste this URL to this particular movie page and load it up, it will show English because I'm a user configured to see English pages. Now let's imagine that I want to change my user to something else. So how do I do that? How do I configure my user? So first of all, I go to I click on my name on top right, and then I go to my Office profile, which gets you to Delph. And clicking the update profile button brings you to the profile page. Now this profile page, if you scroll down, you might think like, hey, why isn't there like an obvious change language button or a drop down or whatever? Well, it's not there. So, but it's slightly hidden. So if you scroll down and you see this one, how can I change language to regional settings? So clicking on the button, you get another link to click, loading up the old profile page. And in here, there's another thing to know. You still don't see languages, no way to change language. So you still have to click here, language and region. And only then you can change the language. So only then you can put Dutch or French or whatever language that you want in here and configure the order. Now, this is actually a pretty bad user experience, and we will be changing this. This will be more fluent and better in the future. So, but for now, this is the way how to do this. To save some time, because if you make this change, it won't be applied immediately. It will take some time to propagate. So in order to save that time, I already configured another account here. And this guy, and he is in Dutch. So if you can't read this, then you can't read Dutch. So this is Dutch. But let's go back to the other side. Here in the beginning. No, where was it? This one. SIG demo. Yes. Let's actually copy the link to the movie page and see what we get if we do the same page for this particular user. Let's open up a new tab. And he's configured to see Dutch. And then if everything goes well, and it does, then you see that he is automatically being redirected to the Dutch page. So you see Dutch over here. So this is actually really the Dutch page. And if you look at the URL, you see that the /nl is there. So SharePoint saw the URL for the movie page. It understood that user Kevin, in my case, is configured to prefer Dutch, and it noticed there's a Dutch page, and then it moved him to Dutch. If Kevin doesn't like Dutch, he can always switch back to English, but that's like a manual switch that he has to do. All right, so this gives you the kind of way how it works. I hope that's clear. So let's move on to the actual programmatic approach. Now we are at the other side, the multilingual side, and this side I already prepped some multilingual pages. So if you go to pages, you'll see that there is a multilingual page. And I can actually just change language. This is the English one. If you go to Dutch, you'll see, in this case, all the countries where folks speak Dutch. Now, let's export this page to a template. So let's go to PowerShell. And let me authenticate to my site like this. And then that's done. Now I'm going to export the site using the get PnP provisioning template. And I'm exporting all the client-side pages as well. So this is a really handy option. Right. So this starts to run. While this is running, I'm going to show you the output already. So I've done this before. And here we have the output. We have a template. So for folks that have used the provisioning templates, this is familiar structure. Pages live in the client-side pages element. If I click this open, I get a client-side page. So for example, this is my multilingual page over here. And let's actually do word wrap, Alt-Z, so like this. So this page, this client-side page, the multilingual page English with the URL, the page name multilingual page here. That's the master page. This page has translations. So page translations live in the translations element. Then there's a new client-side page. So essentially we are kind of embedding a page in a page. And this client-side page has exactly almost all the same options as this client-side page. There's a few differences. So the master page does have a new attribute called create translations. So if that's true, which is the default, then when you apply this template, it will automatically create the translated pages. And it indicates what's the master language. 1033 means English. The actual client, the embedded client-side pages under the translations node over here, they do indicate what's their language. That's it. So it's a Dutch one and a French one. And you see the page name already also that there is like a folder name in the page name. So this already indicates that it's multilingual as well. But in the end, I mean, you can anything you can do today with modern pages works here for multilingual pages as well. So it's simply a matter of defining the right template. Easiest is just extract the template from a working site and then you get this. So this should be done. All right. So we have a template, which is the same that I just showed before, but different name. It's called movie.xml. Let's actually now apply this template to a site. So here I have a brand new empty site. Going to pages, it is loading up. Come on, it's empty. So no pages. If I go to multilingual settings, site information, site settings, you will see that language that is not even configured to be multilingual. Oh, wait, that should not be the case. I did the test before. Let's turn it off just to be really clear. All right, so it's not multilingual anymore, right? So let's see what happens if we apply the template here. Okay, so we're going to apply the same template. So now we need to connect to this target site.
Can you slightly increase the font just for the? It helps on seeing what's actually happening.
Sure.
I'm getting old, I know, but I can't see. So.
Better, like this.
Yeah,
size?
Slightly better.
All right. I can even make it bigger, meaning if you want, whatever that you want, like this.
Yeah, that's fine as well, because then you can actually see what's happening. It's easier to follow. So,
okay, good. All right. So I'm going to apply the template, apply -PnP provisioning template. I just pointed to the extracted template. And this starts to run. Now, this will take a couple of minutes. So we can already move over to the site. And we should be seeing pages appearing. So what will happen is that when the template and the provisioning engine does see a multilingual page, it will actually look at the page and will ask SharePoint to first create translations. So we'll apply like a dummy page. We ask SharePoint to create the translations. At that point, we have, in this case, 3 pages which are connected internally, because at that point, SharePoint knows that these pages are translations of the other page. And then we actually override the pages with the actual content. So that's the flow that we apply. In this case, then, well, it just works and you get the desired result. And we're still using the actual SharePoint logic to set up multilingual. We're not messing up with the fields ourselves, which could be done, but we're using a clean approach and let SharePoint handle that. So content appeared, might be done. Let's check. It's done, no errors. So let's check if it works. Let's go over here, multilingual page. And we see our language picker top right. So that's good. So that means that we configured multilingual. We see the different languages. So if I go to French now, we'll see all the countries where folks speak French, or where part of the country speaks French. So this is all good. This works. But what I want to show you next is some of the API changes there in an example. So what I did here is I created a folder. I'm a folder. And in there is a page. This page has 1 translation. So when you translate pages, you don't have to have translations for all your pages. Some pages might be translated in 5 languages, some in 2, some in 1. So in this case, this particular page is translated only to Dutch. Now, how can I programmatically trigger SharePoint to create the other language versions, in this case, French? So I want to add a French translation to this page in SharePoint. I could kind of update the template and apply it again. At that point, it will be fixed, because the template, the reapply of an updated template will then add also additional translations. So that's the scenario that we support. But we also have an API. So for that, I have some code in Visual Studio. I have a test case here, and maybe I should make it even bigger, Vesa. Let's see, 150. All right. So here I have a piece of code where I connect to my multilingual target site, so the one that I just showed before. I'm going to load up the page living in the IMA folder, in that folder. And then I'm going to actually look at the status and generate additional translations. So let's see how that goes. So if I right click, let's launch this test, debug test. That should start really quick. Usually, go on, build started, oh, it had to rebuild. Okay, build succeeded. Now it's running the code. we should hit our breakpoint in a second. Alrighty, we got the breakpoint. So let's load the page. Now the client-side page is loaded. You get like an object model talking, kind of showing the content of the page. Now, if you're interested in understanding, like pragmatically, like, is this page translated? If you want to know that from your programs, you can use the translations method on the page. Hit F10. Then let's actually show this in quick watch, because that's something I can zoom. I will zoom in a second. Sorry for that. So let's first open up the results. So what you get back from the API, like this. Let's zoom. You see that for this particular page, there is one translation. So this one. There is one untranslated page, French. So SharePoint will tell you like, okay, you have X number of translated pages and X number of untranslated pages. For the translated page, it will tell you the information, the culture, this is a Dutch page, published, this URL, etc. For the untranslated, it will just show you like, okay, this language is not there. Now, what you can do then is actually add translation for that particular language, which I do in this case using this approach. I'll create a translation status creation request object. F10. Add the French language. And then I'm going to call the page.get generate translations, which will tell SharePoint to add the additional languages that I specified, in this case only French. And now this is done. And flipping back to the side, we have a French language there, a French translation. So I can kind of update this French page and start using that. So that's kind of how this works. There's other APIs as well, like a handy one is if you just call page.generate translations, it will add all languages automatically. Meaning if you just want to backfill all the missing languages, let's assume you added a new language to your site and you have 1,000 pages, meaning you can iterate over it and call generate translations on each page, each source page, and all the other translations are generated for you. So that's ways to do that. I think that sums up, Vesa. I didn't look at the chat window, so if there's anything really burning questions, we have still some time to kind of wrap up.
Not really. There's a valid comment from Christian as an example on the confusion, what is getting translated, what's not related, and what's static labels and what's content, and that's basically aligned with what it was in the classic. We know the confusion, and we know that it's slightly confusing, and there will be improvements in the documentation, improvements on the processes as well. But it even as when you're doing the first time on the demos and setting things up, you're like, well, what's getting translated? Where am I? What's where? What?
Yeah. So it's the page content and the Chrome. So,
and the navigation nodes.
And the navigation nodes can be translated. So, but not everything can be translated, but the majority of content can be translated nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And there will be further improvements absolutely on this one. Now, the second comment, which you noted out really well as well, is the complexity of how can I set up my language?
Yeah. To be honest, I had to search again as well.
Exactly. Which been like that from already for 10 years or so.
Yeah,
for whatever reason, it's really hard. And sure, it has to be easier for end users to set up the language because you can't teach end users such a long paths. So it has to be easier because we're living in a globalized world and there are multiple languages, official languages in many of the countries. So absolutely improvements there as well. There's no API for it either, right? There's an API. So everything what you saw right now today is using APIs. So whatever Bert showed is using CSOM and REST APIs behind the scenes. So
there is. I'm using like one REST call. The other stuff is just regular CSOM.
Tim Duncan's comment is for changing the user language. I think you can change the user language using the user profile settings,
Yes.
user profile APIs. So you should be able to do that.
Correct. And one thing maybe to just mention, if you want to enable multilingual, boils down to activating the multilingual pages feature. So that's the key thing to remember if you want to pragmatically enable multilingual. But all that you saw on the demo is just using API. So
good. I'm just realizing that we are gradually getting out of time as well, and I do have a follow-up meeting starting in 2 minutes as well. So I need to be conscious about my time because I'm leading that as well. Doing back-to-back meetings is always hard. Everybody knows this, and especially if you need to present in multiple things. Now, we went through a lot of the questions in the chat during the day, during the Bert's presentation as well. We know that there's plenty of other questions as well. Please join on the community calls, and you can ask questions on the following community calls, and obviously tech community is a good location to ask these questions as well. So we can potentially then loop in the right people and the ownerships and owners of the feature to answer these things as well. Obviously, this feature is owned by DC Pador, who actually did demo this, I think, was it November timeframe in the monthly community call as well, if I remember correctly.
Yes, and maybe something on the rollout. So this is being rolled out this quarter to targeted release. So you should and be available in your tenant fairly soon.
Absolutely. Now, I think that's it for today. So thank you, Chris, for the great demo. Thank you, Bert, for the great demo. Next SharePoint Dev SIG meeting is in January 23rd, and SharePoint Framework is within a week. So every single Thursday we have a community call. The monthly community call next Tuesday, Project Cortex. You don't want to probably miss that one. But thank you for a awesome discussion once again on the chat window. Super valuable for everybody who's on the call. Recording will be out within 24 hours. Thank you. Bye-bye.